Hello, everyone. Welcome to Writing Quest. My name is Brendan Pugh, and today we have Jonathan Weiss with us, all the way from Australia. And so we're going to just talk to him about his publishing journey and his writing. And how are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing great, and thank you for having me from such long distance as well. For me, it's coming from the 24th of May instead of the 23rd for you, so I'm living in your future, which is very fun. But yeah, it's a beautiful sunny day, even if it is the middle of winter. So I'm just trying to make sure I keep warm. I've got like 3 layers of socks on at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. So is it cold there for you right now?
Yeah, it's about 15 degrees Celsius today, which is about, I don't know, maybe 60 something Fahrenheit for you probably,
Okay.
which still isn't too cold, but you know, being an Australian, we're used to the warmth here, man. Like you're coming through summer where I don't know it's like 110 degrees Fahrenheit or something most of the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just not used to this most of the time. It always
S-
catches me by surprise.
So we're in the Midwest of the United States. And so for us, we're coming into summer.
Mm.
And so 60 degrees for us coming out of winter, like pretty much once it hits 50 degrees Fahrenheit here, everyone starts wearing shorts.
Yeah,
So that's like fairly warm for us. So middle of summer it'll start to be like we'll get up to 100, we can get anywhere from like 80 to 100.
nice.
But yeah, like 50, 60 degrees and we're like it's shorts weather.
You can finally
Yeah.
get them out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, great. That's awesome. So, why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself? Tell us kind of where you started, how you got into writing, and then how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, sweet, of course. So look, I'm coming up on 30 now this year, so that's going to be fun. I've been writing for about half my life. I've been writing since I was 15. I've always been a creative person. I tried to get my hand into stop motion animation when I was like 11 or 12, you know, with all your little plasticine models and taking like 24 pictures of them to make only a second of footage. It turns out that I'm not that patient. But I always knew that I like to have a lot of control over the way I create things. So I could never really get into an art form where I'd have to work with other people. Not to say that I'm not a team player, but you know, I do my best when I'm left alone to do my own thing, right? Um, so I've been writing books kind of for myself since I was 15. It was only like when I was about 21 or 22 that I started figuring out how to write, you know, good books, which, you know, takes some time, right? Especially, you know, when you're a teenager, because like I don't think that any book a teenager has written ever comes out as something that's good, right? Like you're still
Hmm.
figuring yourself out. Um, so
Very,
yeah, I've
very
been
rare exceptions.
very, very rare exceptions, definitely. I'll allow for those. Those can be
Yeah.
read through. Um, so yeah, when I was 21, I kind of got the idea for the Droughtlands, which is the big desert land that all my books are set in at the moment. So it's this big red dune swept apocalyptic wasteland with this extinct sci-fi civilization buried underneath, where the magic that wiped those people out that was left behind is like this radioactive hazard for the people who go down there to find the treasures or like other remnants of technology that they're looking for, you know. Um, and it took me a while to figure out how to make the kind of first few stories really stick in that land because I always found myself caught between multiple time periods in that world. Like there was the present, which I tried to set the stories in. There was the time of the uh, extinct sci-fi people, and then there was another time kind of in the middle of that for something else. Then I was always kind of having a lot of trouble making characters kind of make all those three things relevant. And I only started to figure it out like in the past 2 or 3 years. In the intervening time outside of writing, I'd gotten into tech sales. And, you know, especially during COVID, it turns out you can make a fair bit of cash off that. So I found myself in about 2022 sitting on a pretty hefty nest egg. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to make a run of this. I'm going to be a full time self published author for a bit. I'm just going to churn out as many books as I possibly can. Which is kind of a lot of the self-publishing advice you get. Make as many books as you can. That's when the advertising starts to work. That's when you start to get a following. So I've been trying to publish a full novel every 5 months and succeeding so far, which is really good. Um, but yeah, it's been a really fun ride to kind of learn and develop. And one of the quirks that I've come into that with is that I came in with two almost finished books for two different series that were set in the same world. So I've been alternating releases between the two. So I've got the Flux Catastrophe books, which are a bit more Mad Max. They're a bit more combat, battle based. They're more action. And then I've got the First Hythero books, which are set 30 years after all that, as their own entire separate story and really the backbone to every story I'm trying to tell here, which are a bit more like if Last Airbender met June, for instance. So I'm getting a lot of different flavors through, which is really nice. It's just trying to keep the different stories straight in my head and make sure I don't paint myself into a corner is the hard bit that I'm tackling now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome that you're able to do that. I think that's kind of the dream almost, to have that little bit of a nest egg to just be like, hey, I'm gonna really go for it and try for it. Because that's always like the hardest part of, when do you make the jump, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but man, a full book every 5, 6 months, that is impressive. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the reason why I can do it is the alternating series thing. So while, yeah, that's a really fast way to get out a book. Each book essentially has like 10 months from conception to publishing to fully brew. So I'll get like the first draft done over the course of 3 to 4 months. And I'll be doing that while like another book is in its edit phases or in its proofreads or going out to ARC readers and stuff like that. So I'm constantly bouncing back and forth between them. And it means that each story has like enough time to brew. Because if I stuck with the one series, I'd be overlapping myself. Like I'd have to start writing the next book while the first one was still in its early edits, which just wouldn't work.
Yeah. So are the two series, are they not in the same world at all, or are
They
they?
are in the same world,
But
yeah.
they're
So they're
like,
both set in the Droughtlands, yeah. They're just
yeah,
kind of like 30 years apart. There's Easter eggs and stuff between them, and that makes it really fun when like it comes to the reading order, because you can actually read it in different orders to get different perspectives and perceptions on things. So I'm hoping like once I get the all the series out, because I'm planning about 14 books in total, kind of set here for now.
mhm.
There's going to be like enough different ways you can read it that there's just going to be a constant fan argument on the internet about the best way to read
Yeah,
it.
which is
Nothing.
which is
No,
great
go
for
on.
you as an author, because it just kind of
Yeah,
sets it up for like people always talking about it, and
that's it.
that's yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I had the same. So I haven't published anything, but I'm working on my stories and everything, and that's kind of the whole point of this whole YouTube channel, was being on the writing quest.
Mm.
But I did the same thing where like I had a couple of ideas, and it was going to be like a trilogy, and then I thought, well, there's stories in this time period, and there's stories in this time period, and now I've got this kind of 13 book crazy outline going for all of this. And but I did the same thing where I was like, there's just so many stories I could tell within this framework.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's just it's overwhelming sometimes. Like it's just too much stuff to actually wrap your head around. So like I do often have to pull myself out of like that big picture thinking. Just think, all right, what needs to happen in just the next scene? Only the next scene. The next scene can do whatever it wants, and I'll let that change everything else. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, so does to get into a bit of your writing process, do you, I'm assuming since it's a fairly big series with multiple time periods, you probably have some pretty extensive notes and stuff, but how do you outline a lot? Do you kind of make it up as you go? Like, what's that process look like for you?
I start with the best intentions of outlining when I start writing a book. I'll have like a bit of a big beat manifesto, which is like, here's the big kind of moments that I want to hit through the book. And then I'll get about halfway through writing the book and I'll notice that I've completely deviated from what that plan was. And then I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. Usually, I don't have to paint myself into a corner. I haven't had to yet. Um, I try and keep like the distant future of the future books vague. I don't want to pin myself into a defined fate effectively, which is, if you do happen to read all the books, you'll find there's this particular relevance into me saying that. I try to let kind of what the most exciting thing that could happen in the books be the thing that shapes the future of the next books. So like if I compared what my original intention for the third book in the Flux Catastrophe series that I'm writing now, if I compared that intention from when I first started out writing these series to what I'm doing now, entirely different books.
Yeah.
They're just worlds apart, effectively.
Yeah. I find that I like to outline I kind of hard pivoted into outline, but now I kind of in the middle. But I like to outline a lot. I found when I did that early on, when I got into writing, the more I learned about my characters, the more the outline I'd have to go back and fix the outline and kind of rework it because the characters would do something and I was like, that doesn't fit the outline, but also it really fits the character. And so I
Yeah.
found that my characters changed my outlines a lot.
Yeah, that's honestly what happens a lot. Like, you are beholden to them. Like the last book I published, I had to take like a 3 month break from writing the first draft because I had a character do something that was so beyond the outline that I was just like, I just needed to replan the entire thing from scratch. It was crazy.
Yeah. I think that's what makes writing so unique too, of like your characters kind of write half the book for you. So like
Yeah,
you have all these intentions and plans and thoughts and ideas, but then your characters do something and you're like, that's not what I was thinking, but also that is what they would do. So it's hard to, it's that's kind of a unique feature I think of other than outside of other creative fields.
yeah. I was about to say that. Like, you can't do that when you're making a movie. Like, if a actor says, "Hey, I've got some great new lines for the script for the scene we're filming," you're like, "Cool, that's a great line," but that breaks like the hours and hours of footage we've already filmed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I love it so much. You can just chop and change as much as I like.
Yeah, for sure. I like that idea of, alternating this series. I think that's a really fascinating way to, get the books out faster. So you said you had about 14 that you're thinking, do you have more than that? Or like what happens if in a couple of years from now you got all those out and, here.
Oh, now I'm free. It's finally done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. No one's actually asked me what I do after I've done all those 14 books. I think that the thing that I'm coming up on is that now I'm writing the last book in one of those series. Like, there's a really kind of heavy finality to the way that I'm approaching it. So I'm never going to return to those characters. I'm never going to return to those moments. But I think the world itself is going to be something that's so ripe for exploration that I'll never be able to kind of leave it properly. Like, I'd love to kind of go out and write some like full on sci-fi without all the apocalyptic sand and stuff like that. But I think I'm always going to come back to the Droughtlands because it just feels like home for me. Like, it's been within me and now out of me for coming up on 10 years now. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I have this same kind of, I talk with my brother a lot about writing and he's like, do you have any other ideas? I'm like, no, I have this idea
What's
and
wrong with this idea?
I have a lot of ideas within this, but I have no like there's like nothing outside of it. I don't I have really no other like stories outside of this one that I'm wanting to do. So I resonate with that.
Yeah, and I think the scary bit about that is like you have all these ideas that are like really hooked into this one world, but that just puts a lot of pressure on the first book you write to be good enough to get people into it. Like,
Mhm.
it needs to, because like, everyone knows that their first book isn't going to be their best, but it just needs to be good enough that people are going to get into it. So yeah, like it's scary putting out that first book. Like, when you get there, like you'll probably feel kind of nervous, but like that's natural, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always nerve-wracking whenever you put anything creative out there. I was a musician in my previous life. That's what I always did, and
Mm.
um, doesn't seem to matter what creative thing you jump into. There's always that little bit of nerve-wracking moment when you put it out there, and so I think writing is another kind of unique feature of that. Is it takes even if it takes you a year to write a book, that's still a long time to sit with one creative project and a lot of writers will sit for years and years with a project. So once you do finally put it out there, it's like it's like a
Yeah, this
baby
is my
that you're
baby,
like, this is my
Yeah.
thing, and then you put it out there finally, and like a song or something, you write a song, maybe it takes you a couple months. I don't think you spend as much time with them, and so I think writing becomes more nerve-wracking that way.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that I have trouble with these days is like there's no instant feedback when someone buys a book. My
Mm-hmm.
wife's an artist. They do these amazing pencil drawings of Australian native birds. And when someone buys one of their prints, that's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I'm going to hang that on the wall. You know, like they've
Mm-hmm.
seen the full product. They've gone, this is the thing I need in my life, and they're in. But like when someone buys a book, like they're having a lot of faith in you, but you got to wait for them to get around to read it, and you probably won't even hear back from them to see if like they did like it or not. So the gratification that you're hoping for, it's pretty few and far between.
Yeah. Even if you were standing in the bookstore right next to them when they bought
Yeah,
it, they still couldn't tell you right away, because
it's like,
like
yeah,
you're,
it sounds good. Yeah,
yeah, like an art, an art piece. It's like they can buy it and they can look at it and say, "This is great." But with the book, it's like you buy the book and be like, "See you in a couple months,"
yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, that's fun. Yeah. So okay, so you kind of transitioned into being this, just going for it as a self-published author. So what's that journey been like? Do you feel like you're going to be able to sustain it? Like you feel like you're able to make it work, or how's that all worked for you?
Yeah, it's I think I'm starting. It's starting to pick up. Like I'll admit, the first year was pretty quiet. Like I didn't focus too much on marketing. I didn't kind of network enough to kind of get into the different writing and kind of indie fantasy communities that I needed to be in, because I was just so focused on churning out the next book. So like trying to learn the ropes of self publishing, because it is a behemoth. Like there's a lot to learn, and the worst part about it is that you need to learn some useless knowledge along the way. You need to learn what doesn't work as you figure out what does work. So it feels like time wasted, but it's not really. But anyway, yeah, the start of this year was really good because I reached out to one author, Rob Lee, who was posting under the hashtag the break-ins, which turned out to be this awesome writing group they allowed me into, and now we've just kind of death ball together. No, not death ball. Sorry, what's the Voltron together as like a big kind of collaborative team of writers and uh, indie publishing influencers and stuff as we kind of make our debuts or kind of take our first steps into indie publishing. And it's been really great to have them as a support structure. It's been great to be able to be involved in supporting them too. And I think, yeah, that honestly would be my key advice to, like, if you are starting out on a self-publishing journey, to anyone listening who is, like, yeah, find your friends first. You need to find people to talk to who will support you and who you can support as well, because that makes it all seem a lot more real than just sitting at home in a box, just tapping away at a keyboard.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many people out there. Like the more I've kind of delved into, asked, seeing if I can interview people and talk with them. And there's just so many people out there doing so many cool things. And not only that, but I interviewed one guy who created a comic book, and
Mm.
he lives in South Africa, and his artist lives in South America. And
Wow.
so and you're in Australia, like just this idea that living in this world where all of us creatives can finally like talk and collaborate, and it's just really cool. It's a really cool time to be alive for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's almost never ending, right? Like
Hmm.
there's just so many, like you'll never get to know everyone in here. I always feel like I'm kind of stumbling into new chambers, new social circles of people that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. Well, the break-ins, that's a really cool concept. And I'd interviewed Brian Wilson, who's part of that, and Caden Love too, which I didn't know
Mm.
was a part of that in the beginning either. Um, and then all Brian, I guess, must have shared it with you
That's it.
guys.
That's exactly what's happened there. Brian
Yeah,
just
and
came
then
into our group and just went, "Hey, Brendan's looking for people to interview, man." I'm like, "Sold. I'm in."
yeah, and all of a sudden I was like, "Whoa, I got a bunch of people to talk to." So this is really awesome. So I love it. It's really fun, and I think I'm kind of in the same boat with you about like you were saying in the beginning, where you kind of like to create alone. I'm
Mm.
kind of the same too, of like I do better if I'm just can create by myself, but then also eventually pass it on for other people to see. But for the most part, starting it and doing mostly by myself. But I think, like you're saying, having a group like the break ins to eventually share your stuff with, that's a huge benefit for them, for you. Like it's just, yeah, you got to have those people around you.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's just like no man is an island. Is how I'd sum it up, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So you are you're doing this full time. How do you stay motivated in your day to day? So you don't really have a day job, you're doing it full time. How do you kind of, what do you have any special routines? Do you have any special tips and tricks, or do you just kind of write when you feel like it, or how's that all work?
Um. Yeah. If only I knew the tips and tricks, right? Like it's
Yeah.
you know when like you feel like you stumble on something good and you keep trying to do it and eventually it stops working.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I feel like I'll start a good routine and I feel like it'll work really well, but then I'll need to change it. So full to kind of share with you, I did get diagnosed with ADHD about 5 years ago, which did explain a lot of things, right?
Hmm.
And one of the core tenets of ADHD is that you'll have a hyperfixation, like you can get really focused in on just the one thing, and that's the only thing you can think of. It's the only thing you can do. And so I do find that writing a lot of the time is my target of my hyperfixation, which is really convenient because, it gets me some good output. Like if I'm in first draft mode, I'll get like 3 or 4 thousand words down a day, which is usually like a chapter a day. And, like I know there's authors out there that can put out like 10,000 words in a day or something like that. But I find that everything for me that I've written turns to slop after about 5,000 words in a day. So I don't want to push it. So yeah, like I think that is just like constantly thinking about how I'm going to tell the next bit of the story. Like even if I'm just starting up a writing session, just taking a moment to think about like the exact wording of the next sentence, just visualizing how the words are shaped on the page, like each letter essentially. That's the thing that kind of gets the ball rolling because otherwise it just seems like too big a concept. It's like approaching a blank page every time.
Yeah. Do you find that you there's some writers who I've heard say like just write, just get it out. Like whatever it is, just write it down as much and as fast as you can. But then there's also like I think it's Stephen King where his process is he tries to write 6 really clean pages every day. So not
Mm.
like 6 messy random draft pages, like 6 really clean. Like where do you kind of lean either way that way?
I think I lean a bit more Stephen King's way. Like, I don't, I write in order. I write the book in progress. I rarely, if ever, skip a scene and come back to it. And yeah, the pages I'm writing, I know it's never going to be like really clean, like edited, ready to go kind of pages, but I'll write them as if like if someone picks this up now and starts reading, it's going to make sense as a book. So yeah,
Mhm.
I'd prefer to do it that way because I couldn't, like, editing's already a painful process, isn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine coming back to like a really messy first draft that you need to edit rather than something that's a bit cleaner. Like, yeah, I feel like it's just saving me trouble down the road. Like, I hate nothing more than like having to remove an entire chapter because it just feels like so much effort wasted.
Yeah. Yeah, that I have one full draft that I've finished. Um and it was kind of the first thing I'd ever written and gotten completed, but it was
Hmm.
before I really had dove into like learning how to outline and all that kind of stuff. And I have it's sitting on my bookshelf back here, but like I just can't bring myself to like start editing it because it's such a mess. It's so
Yeah,
like it's very debilitating to like read through it and be like, I just don't even know where to start with this whole thing. Like basically it needs rewritten, and that's
yeah.
and part of that is I started before I had no idea what I was doing. I just thought, hey, this sounds like a good idea, let's go for it. Now I'm looking back, I'm like, I'm just gonna have to rewrite it, essentially take the good parts and you know
Yeah. I mean, look, that's what happened with one of my books. Like, this one. So the Hythera Redux, that is like the first, like the core of the story was the first book of what I started writing in the Droughtlands, and because it's about a character who's like thrown 1,000 years beyond their time into the future, and they've had their memory stolen. I always had a hard time making that character stick to the present story, and so yeah, I did have to come back and rewrite it a few times before I figured out exactly how to make it work. So I'd recommend it. Like, go back and rewrite it, but I think don't even try to come back and save the bits that did work. I think that you're coming back and figuring out what was my original intention, what was the thing that got me excited about the story, and then you base the story about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think doing more of a um maybe pulling out the meaning and intention of what you're trying to tell with the story, but not necessarily keeping and saving like the words that are there, you know.
Yeah, like the words or the action sequences and stuff. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So do you write maybe let's get into a little bit of tools. What kind of tools do you use to write? Do you write on a computer? Do you use software? Do you write with a notebook? Like what do you kind of do with all that?
I have
Ooh,
a fancy split mechanical keyboard. That
nice.
really does help with the writing. Because yeah, I found like my shoulders and my neck would jam up a bit if I was writing on a regular keyboard. So this thing's great because I can spread the two halves apart. I'm just writing Microsoft Word, to be honest with you. Like a lot of people do like to use things like Scrivener and stuff like that. I think it's too complicated. I don't like when there's administration to go with the note taking. If I am taking notes, I'll use something like OneNote because it's really free form, or like yeah, I'll just write it down in a physical notebook. The number one tool that I have though, I've got a big whiteboard over in the corner,
Mhm.
and just being able to scribble ideas on that is really good because nothing feels fixed in. Nothing feels like it has to stay there forever. Nothing feels like when I write it down, it has to be good words. It's like everything there is ephemeral when I write it down. So if it's a good idea, it'll stay up there for a week. If it's a bad idea, it'll get rubbed out after a day or two when I see it again and get sick of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was a big Scrivener user for a long time, and I still like Scrivener. I think there's a lot of pros to it, but I've actually went into I handwrite and use. I've just been using notebooks and stuff,
Wow.
and part of the I just it feels just like I can just sit down and write. Like it kind of takes all
Mm.
the pressure out of it, and I agree with you. Sometimes when you use something like Scrivener or whatever, and again, like they're great programs, you can really organized well. Like I love using it, but it's also it kind of adds that pressure of like it's got to be
Mm.
organized and it's got to use all the tools available within the software. Whereas sometimes I'm like, I just want to write the
It's
you
like a
know
closer connection between like your brain and kind of the output, right? Because there just isn't like an extra layer of technology. It's just you and a pen and stuff.
yeah, and I it also helps with distractions. So I'm not I'm
Mm.
my phone on me or getting my whole job, my normal day job is I'm on a computer all the time. So when I get on a computer, I there's all the
It's
things on a
job mode,
computer
yeah.
that yeah. So that was kind of a way of me being like, I just want to write and I don't want anything to bug me, you know?
Mm.
Um I do and I really like using Notion. I don't know if you've ever used Notion for anything.
It's,
Um
it's a name I hear around sometimes. What is it exactly? Sorry.
it's more like a productivity software. Like most people
All
use it
right.
for like it's kind of a blank canvas though. Like you can basically build and do whatever you want in it. But I like it
Mm.
for you can do like Kanban boards and all sorts of stuff, but I like it for just outlining, keeping notes, like because you can drag stuff around and
All right.
so
Yeah.
that
Cool.
works. So I kind of have like a all my notes and things I keep digital so that it's easier to move things around and stuff. But then when I do the
Mm.
writing, I have been writing in a notebook. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Nice.
kind of
Oh,
a
that's pretty cool. I have
rev-
done like a couple written scenes in a notebook when I've gotten a good bit of writer's block. So yeah, I do find that works for me too.
yeah. So here's a big question, and it's a bit controversial. No judgment
Mm.
from me. But do you use any AI? Have you used AI? What do you think about AI? I like to ask people because I get it. You
It's a
never
good
know.
question. It's like a question. Yeah, it's something that needs to get asked sometimes. Yeah. The second book in the Flux Catastrophe, Blazing Flux, is my manifesto on how I feel exactly about generative AI. I get really into the metaphors about that because the people of the world they accidentally discover this uh, liquid metal that contains a whole bunch of AI driven nanomachines that's trying to conform to what they want. So that gets really screwy. Yeah, I don't use AI in anything as far as I know. It's a caveat that I always add to statements like that because the way that artificial intelligence, or at least generative AI, is being injected into everything, eventually it's going to come to a point where we can't say we don't use it because it'll literally be in everything. Like like Windows 11 itself is going cool. It just has AI in it. It's just doing AI things for you. But
Yeah.
even then, like saying AI is like a really foggy, hazy kind of term because, like, yeah, I think a lot of people in the artificial intelligence field say that the name AI is just a misnomer from the 1960s or something. Like, it just includes too much stuff. So, if we are talking kind of in the realm of like machine learning and large language models like ChatGPT and like, I don't use any of that because it's just a predictive text. Like you're better off, you're just as good as getting out your phone and just hitting the little next word guessing thing in your
Hmm.
phone keyboard. Um, I don't use it for advertising images either. I know some people do and find that a little bit of success with that, but uh, I just don't feel right about it. I don't think. I think that it's one of those things where it's a low enough bar of entry that everyone can do it, so everyone would do it, and then all the ads would start to look the same effectively. So I'm trying to use like larger versions of my cover images for my advertisements and stuff, or something else. I just trying to be creative around that. I feel like that's going to make all my books distinct because, yeah, look, at the end of the day, the whole way that this kind of generative AI works is it's taking the average or the mean result of all the data that's fed into it. So you're only ever going to get like an average product out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. When ChatGPT first kind of came out, I did try. I haven't tried this recently. Maybe the newer models or can. I just tried it to see what would happen if I gave it like a paragraph of a story I just wrote a paragraph of something and then just kept asking it to continue just to see
Yeah.
like how far can this really go. And for the first like two times it was like, okay, that's not terrible. Like it kind of copied the style I had written it, and then it kept going. And then eventually what it did was it just kept like regurgitating the same thing but in a different way.
Yeah.
So and it couldn't like keep creating anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And like that's just the way it works. Like it doesn't have enough kind of points of data to kind of accurately do that. And I mean, I think that's the thing that annoys me about like the first kind of steps for the world, the first way the world is introduced to AI being like in creative fields like that, because that's not what AI should be doing. It should be like analyzing huge amounts of data. That's what AI is really good at doing. And it's like, I think I compared it to like taking a F-35 fighter jet to the supermarket. It's just a hugely expensive product to do, you know, write a paragraph. It's kind of crazy, right?
Hmm.
I think that there's going to come a time when the venture capital funding that's being thrown at AI projects is going to dry up or at least become a bit more reasonable. And the things that we currently can get for free is going to be stuff that we have to pay a pretty hefty subscription for. And no one's actually going to use it at that point for the ways they're using it now, because like the amount of kind of computing power that I've heard it takes to generate an image is just ridiculous. Like I know there's people getting scared of like AI being able to generate video, but again, like the computing power that probably goes into that is enormous. It's probably easier just to hire the actors and go to the location and film it yourself. It's literally the whole thing about like it would have been more expensive for them to fake the moon landing on a soundstage and actually send some guys to the moon and film it there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's great for just like menial things like
Mm,
um writing a like I don't know.
like an email or something.
Yeah, like just something basic. But for me, like I think too, creativity wise, so like one of the ways I've been experimenting with it, because I'm just interested. I'm like, what does this do and all that? Is I've experimented with creating like a custom GPT that's that takes the outlines and things from my stories that I've created, but it has very specific rules that it's not allowed to create anything. So
Mm,
it can't create anything. It can't give me suggestions. It can't do any of that stuff. And it can't connect to the internet. Like, turn off the internet feature. So it can't search anything.
that's a good
So
idea.
then all it has become is kind of more like a research assistant for my own stuff. So I can just be
Oh,
like,
right.
hey, I forgot what this character did in chapter two.
That's
And then
good.
it
See,
can
that's a
just,
good use of AI.
yeah, and then it can just give me that info. but it doesn't create anything. It does, because for me, like, as I think most people still want to connect to a creator. And so if everything is created by AI, that's just like a book created by AI is nothing to me.
It's nothing. Yeah, exactly. Even if it was
Yeah.
good, which they really
So,
aren't.
right. And it also takes the joy out of actually creating. So, like, I
Yeah.
want to write a book because I want to write a book, not, you know. Um, but I found that that's been a really helpful use case of like, it's not creating anything, it's just regurgitating stuff easier for me to help me research and make sure that
Yeah,
I'm,
that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, honestly, like I might have to hit you up on how you did that because that does sound like something I could actually use. Because like I'm 5 books in now, and yeah, just having to make sure that I'm keeping the continuity on things is actually starting to get kind of hard.
Yeah, I definitely share with you. It's been pretty cool, and I'm actually kind of working with a buddy. We're very preliminary on maybe doing like a graphic novel within my world, and he's going to draw it and all that kind of
Nice.
stuff, and I'll write it. So what I did was I was able to share with him that GPT, and then he can ask it questions about the story to get caught. It's like I didn't have to fill him in on all of
Mm.
the information about the world because he could ask it.
Yeah, nice.
So it's like a time saver. It's a research assistant. So yeah, I'll definitely send you. We'll chat later, and I'll show you how I did it for
Yeah,
sure.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'd be keen for that.
Yeah. So I like asking about the AI question because you never know what you're going to get these days. And again, it's like a no judgment. You know, people can use it how they choose, but I am. It's as it gets into the creative fields, I'm just
A
interested in
little bit
how
of
people are
judgment
using
there,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
So, all right. So, here's a question. Did you ever consider traditional publishing?
Yeah, I did. So I did try to query Molten Flux and the Hythera Redux before I went. Like this was back in like maybe 2021. Before, yeah, I went to self-publishing because that did seem like the way to do it. And working a full-time job at the time, I was just like, look, if I manage to strike an agent, if they take me on and go to a publishing house, that's a good deal of work taken out of my hands, and I can keep doing what I'm doing. Um, so yeah, I did try getting in the query trenches, and God, it's unforgiving because you are just sending emails out and hoping for the best, and you never hear back. And I think one of the things I realized is that my story and my world and my setting were a bit too out of left field for traditional publishing. I don't think there's much of a appetite for really weird post-apocalyptic things unless like you can pitch it just right. A lot of the publishing that you see in traditional publishing is based on trends. So like if your book isn't named something along the lines of a bowl of mac and cheese, like if it doesn't have that naming structure, no one gives a crap.
Yeah.
So I think that I found myself kind of disenchanted by the whole process, and it was only once I kind of got to a point where I was sick of my full-time job as well that I decided, yeah, I'm going to take this thing on the road. I'm going to go indie with this. And, I found some great podcasts to listen to. Shout out to the Two Indie Authors podcast who have just like the two guys running that. They just recently decided they had to stop because they're getting too successful to keep doing the podcast. They're just like, oh, we're not indie authors anymore. We're getting book deals, man. We can't keep talking authoritatively on this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started listening to that and I started really getting into it. And I pumped out the novella that's a free kind of reader magnet on my mailing list in about 6 days. It's kind of like a proof of concept to like, yeah, I can write this fast.
Mhm.
It ended up being about 20,000 words or so, and it was a really fun kind of tight story to write. And so yeah, I decided from there like I can do this. I'm going to work at it. I looked at kind of how much money I was sitting on and my budget, and I figured out kind of how much time I can give myself to do this. And so, yeah, I've just been kind of trucking away at that, and it's been going pretty good. Like, again, like I'm coming up on, I've just released my 4th book. I'm coming up on book number 5 now. And then, yeah, book number 6 that I release is going to be hopefully later this year if I can write it fast enough. And I'm going to try and do a big Kickstarter because that'll be all 3 books of the Flux Catastrophe series, like that whole completed series now, which is apparently like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for self-publishing, is having a completed series. Going to do a nice big Kickstarter with hardcovers, going to try and get the audiobook going. And because like a lot of the stories based around scrap metal and stuff, I want to have like a Kickstarter tier for a metal backed cover.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
for someone who's willing to pay for it. I just need to. I've seen someone do it with like cast aluminium. I'm obviously not going to do it myself, but I'll find someone who can do that and probably charge like $1,000 for the book
Yeah.
set if they want that.
Yeah. So do you think you would ever that sounds really cool. The I probably would not be able to afford to buy it, but
Oh, me
it sounds
neither.
really awesome. So do you ever would you take a book deal if it came? Like would you stay self-published?
Ah, look, I mean, if they make me an offer, I can't refuse, right?
Hmm.
The thing I like about being self-published is the control bit. Like, I like being the final say for the structure of the book. I like getting the edits back, and I still get the final say of how the edits go. I like getting the final say of what goes into the book. The book cover alone, like, God, I love. Shout out to kfrancis.art on Instagram. He's my cover artist as well. Makes these really cool post-apocalyptic environments for me. I just love having control of that kind of thing. And so if I did get a traditional publishing deal, it would be one of those ones you get from like winning something like the self-published fantasy blog off, which I'm entered for. So fingers crossed for this year, right? Like one of those ones where it's like, oh, cool, yeah, we'll bring you on board into this publishing house, but you're still calling the shots. Like if I can get big enough to call the shots in a traditional publishing deal, I'll be in. But otherwise, like, yeah, I'm kind of enjoying doing the whole process myself.
Yeah. I don't think I could I've been thinking about this a lot that especially with how a lot of adaptations have been going recently
Mm,
of a lot of the bigger name stuff. I think um, I don't know if I would trust anyone else to
yeah,
adapt it and to actually do um, even like Brandon Sanderson. He's been saying he goes Hollywood's been knocking on his door for years now, and he's like, but I don't. He's like I don't need their money, so they don't
yeah.
really have any power over me. So he's really trying to be very careful about how he does stuff. And even with the secret projects,
Yeah.
he self-published all those. He was like, he didn't do it, used go
So
through his
I'll write some
publisher and
books. Just have them.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I think it's interesting to see these even the big artists, the big authors are like, we want the control too. And
Yeah.
so I think that's becoming really important to people.
Yeah. Like, look, we've seen some of the Hollywood adaptations have been absolute butcheries of these like big, like almost big IPs. Like, yeah, I totally get why Brandon Sanderson would go like, yeah, I'm uneasy because like I don't know how many books he's got out there now. Like, if you made a Brandon Sanderson movie,
Hmm.
people would come see it. You know, you don't need to put effort into making a Brandon Sanderson movie. Everyone's going to show up anyway. But yeah, he's probably waiting for someone to come along who really gets it. And I think if I was in that position for my books, I'd be waiting for someone to come along and tell me, "Hey, I discovered the answer to this like really obtuse like puzzle that you hid in one of your books." If they come to me and tell me that, great.
Yeah.
They can give me all the money they want. They can have the rights to it. But until then, yeah, I'd be scared. I think like recent times we've been seeing like some really good adaptations come out. Like I don't know if you watched like the Fallout TV show recently, but that was
It's on my list. I haven't watched it, but it's on my list.
it's really good. And I won't say any more because I hate it when people overhype things.
Yeah. Well, and we saw things like I'm not one to necessarily just hate an adaptation just because.
Mm,
Um, I would say I've felt very lukewarm about most of them. So like Rings of Power is a great
mm,
example. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't the worst thing that's ever been made. It could have been a lot better, and there was a lot of things that didn't make sense.
mm.
Um, they certainly aren't the Lord of the Rings movies. And so that's where I'm at of just like, you know, do you want a lukewarm adaptation or do you want,
Yeah, it's a
something
tough thing.
that's
Because if
great?
someone rolls up and they're just like, "We'll give you $10 million, but we're going to make a lukewarm one," I'd be like, "I don't know, $10 million is $10 million, right?"
Right. Yeah, and that's the
It's tough.
question everyone's got to ask themselves for
Yeah.
sure.
What's your price?
Yeah. I think that I think about Peter Jackson when he made the. Now I'm not really sure what happened with the Hobbit movies. That's a whole
Mm,
other thing. But with the Lord of the Rings movies, there's a part of an interview he did where he said, we want to make Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and we don't want any of our own stuff in it.
Mm,
And I think that's why it was so successful, is that they were
yeah.
tried to remain, if they're not the same as the books, they don't stick to them exactly, but they tried to keep that essence. And I don't know if we do that anymore. I think
Yeah,
everyone's kind of like, we want to make our own thing. And like, that's fine, but then just make your own thing. That's kind of where
and obviously like put some soul into it. Like you see some soulless adaptations and it's disappointing. I think yeah, it's just tough dealing with like big legacies like that. Like you kind of see the same thing with like Blade Runner 2049. If you watched it, like that was
Mhm.
a sequel to a movie that had come out 38 years ago with a different director, and like just trying to pick up this like Blade Runner itself. That's a really contained story. Like for an expansive world, it was a really focused story. So then trying to pick that up again is a really difficult thing. But that came out really good. So I don't know. I think that a lot of the time, a lot of these adaptations just aren't given enough time to cook. Maybe like I think
Mhm.
the Fallout adaptation, again, not to spoil it, like that was given time to cook. Like the props alone were so accurate to the game and the lore. Like I got really excited when I saw just like a bottle of glue on a table that I recognized as like the model from the game. That was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that one so I've not actually, I'm not much of a gamer. I play a little bit,
Mm.
but so I've not really played the Fallout games, but I've heard that show is incredible. So
Oh,
it's on my
it's
list for sure.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So back to your stories. Um, you're working through them. Are you constantly expanding the timeline, or do you just have like the current ones you're wanting to write?
Well, it's a bit complicated. Uh, so
It's
how I was
never
mentioning
easy.
earlier, how I was like writing between timelines. Like I had the present and the past and the time of like the people, the ruins. I call them those of glass. Um, Not to spoil too much, but like the whole world's on this. Have you read Dune by any chance? The Dune books?
I've not read them. I've watched the first movie and I've read some. I kind of have an overview.
Okay. Well, um, the whole world of my books, it's on this loop, a reoccurring loop in the world. Like the world starts, it goes through its motions, and it ends, and it rebirths itself by some means, which I'm not going to spoil. Um, the problem is it's a constant loop, and so all the bad things that happen throughout that loop, they're guaranteed to happen again. So when one of the characters kind of figures that out, they're presented with this quandary of like, do I let this keep happening? And do I let all this suffering, all these horrible things that have led to my existence, do I let them keep repeating, even if it is in another world, in another lifetime, in one that I won't ever know? Or do I derail that, essentially unbinding all our fates? Something much worse could happen. The world could just not repeat afterwards. Is that the responsible thing to do? Is it my place to even say that? And then he meets the character that is keeping things in place like that, and then that's just another larger moral quandary. And again, I won't get too much into it because it's spoilers for the whole thing, but that's basically the problem I have. I need to write all these different moments of time in that big loop throughout eons and eons of history, and try and keep them all kind of cohesive. And then I
Yeah.
need to know what happens if any of those things changes. So the way I do that is by keeping the history spread out and vague. So to answer your question, it is the timeline does expand, but it's not planned out necessarily. It's almost like it's procedurally generated as I go through the story. And now it's not to say that readers should trust me that I'm just making all this stuff up on the fly, because I mean I sort of am, but in a good way, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's the way that I have to kind of start populating it and telling the story. Because if I did try and flesh out all the history, you'd never see a book from me, because I'd have to take years and years to actually do it. And then by the time I actually got around to writing it, I don't think it would be any fun to write.
Yeah. That's cool. Maybe you could do like so you're writing this half right now, and then eventually
Yeah,
you can be like, okay, let's go back and write like the
or
back
before.
half of that loop.
No, that is sort of the plan. That so I've got after I finish the Flux series, I'm going to start a new series that'll start doing a different part of all those events.
Yeah. I like that. I like the and that's this is kind of the same thing Brandon Sanderson's doing in a way of like he's got the whole universe and they're connected and he's starting to connect them more, but he's kept it pretty vague at first because I do think, I think it's a great idea in the sense that readers can get into your books anywhere and it's not totally dependent on all the sequels and all the, like think Marvel movies. Like if you haven't seen all the Marvel movies, going to see the new one
Doesn't make
doesn't make any sense. And
Oh
so,
man.
which is fine if you've watched them all, but
But I mean, with the quality of them these days, though, you kind of don't want
well,
to.
that's a whole new.
That's a
That's
different can of worms. Yeah,
yeah. There, I have the end game poster
I can
here.
see it.
The reason that's there is because that was the end of the best years. It
Yeah, it
just
was
was
like
a good.
I think they should have stopped, man.
Yeah.
I think they should have just, like stopped for like 5 years.
Yeah. That's I so like when that movie came out, I was like, because I was big on it the first, until that. And I just was like, okay, I've got these 20, however many it is, 22 movies or whatever. I'm like, these are great. And I'm just gonna put them over here on the shelf.
It's a separate memory. Yeah,
Yep, it's put away, and then whatever happens next,
separate.
I'm just separate. I'm just detached, and so, to your books, I think it's smart of you because I think if they rely too much on each other, then it can implode, which is what we're seeing.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, if you keep it a little more vague, but it's still connected, it helps you, be able to be more creative and keep it going.
Yeah, I never want to have to write a book to continue a story from a different book. Essentially, like I always want them to be their own sets of themes. I want them to be their own kind of contained environments and their own different feels. And like this is, I mean, the first big like writing compliment I got was when my wife read uh, both the Hythera Redux and Molten Flux, the starts of both these different series, and said that these books feel different, they read different, they sound different in their head. So like I actually did manage to capture a different writing style between those two different books, which like I don't even know how I did it. Like
Yeah.
How do you write differently? That doesn't make sense to me in my head.
That's super. Yeah, I actually find that my writing style changes a little bit depending on what book I'm reading at the moment.
Really?
So
Yeah,
like
right.
if I'm reading Harry Potter, I kind of notice I start writing some of those quirks,
You never met an adverb you didn't like, right?
Yeah, and then or I go to like I'll start reading Brandon Sanderson book and then I kind of start writing like Brandon Sanders. Like I've caught myself a couple times like it influences, but that's great that you're able to like I think that's really cool for readers too cuz keeps it fresh for them.
Yeah, that's it. Like I always try to have like these really key words tied to certain concepts and certain people. Like I think one of my characters, like if he's thinking, he'll chew his upper lip or something. So whenever you see another character chew their upper lip in another book, it's almost like a callback to them.
Yeah.
Or like, just being really particular about like when I use the word silhouette, it denotes like a specific phenomena in the world. So you only see the word silhouette when that thing is going to happen or when I'm implying that thing's going to happen.
Yeah. It's kind of like the in the Flash TV show where like whenever the liquids start floating,
Yeah.
there's going to be some like
Something's happening.
crazy Speed Force thing is about to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool.
That's
Well, hey,
awesome.
man, it's been great. And we're coming up kind of on an hour here. So we'll kind of start drawing it to a close. Maybe if you could give maybe one or two like really big piece of advice for anyone looking to self-publish or starting to self-publish, what would that be? What would be kind of your two key pieces of advice?
Yeah, I'll give. I reckon two key. I'll give one on the writing side, then one on the publishing side. So on the writing side is, I'd say have faith in yourself in your writing. Like even if you are going to write something that's really crap on the first draft, that's what editing's for. Like just forging through and getting a finished like draft on the page is so much better than like going back and redoing the edits every day on the same page. Like when I'm writing the first draft, I never look back. I never edit anything in the process. Like, even if I write something later in the story that means I need to change something early in the story, I just leave a note saying I'll change it in the edit. Like, I'm never going to go back and change it in the time, because I always need to have forward momentum. For the publishing side, I'd say it goes back to what I said earlier. Find your friends, on Instagram, on TikTok. I haven't done it on TikTok because I don't like TikTok.
I'm with you.
It's just like, I don't know, man. How did we get through like 20 years of the worst thing on the internet being auto-playing ads or auto-playing videos, and then we go, cool, an app where it's always playing. Why is that what we like?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
It's that attention. It's got to get that attention.
Yeah.
I
mean, look, as a person with ADHD who doesn't like TikTok, I feel like there's something that doesn't make sense about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, look, yeah, back to the point. Find your friends, because writing and publishing can be very lonely. Having people to shout you out, having people to say, hey, I know a guy. Look, I'm only talking to you because Brian said, hey, Brendan's looking for people to interview. So, like, yeah, just making lots of friends. Nothing needs to be a rivalry. You're not competing with anyone, because, like, you're only going to write, like, I'm only publishing a book every 5 months, but there's people out there reading a book in a day. Someone read all my books in the space of 4 days.
Holy cow.
Like, yeah, they were doing, so this is The Empty Bookshelf, Joel from The Empty Bookshelf, shout out to them as well. They were doing a March Madness challenge where they read 31 books in 31 days.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, right?
That's crazy. I don't know if I could. I don't even know if I could. I don't know if I could absorb all of that.
I know exactly, right? I don't know. Well, they got my books. Like, they came to me and they said, "Hey, I worked out this puzzle that you left behind." I'm like, "Yeah." It was very gratifying.
That's cool.
So yeah, like, find your friends, because they'll give you opportunities. And you can give them opportunities, and that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside too.
Yeah. I agree. I was just talking to someone about this, that so I've been doing my YouTube channel for a few years now and just making videos, and it's the whole story. But I just thought, what if I just started interviewing self-published authors and like getting their stories? And it's just amazing what happens when you just ask people stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
people like to talk about themselves.
Yeah. Well, and it's like this whole community of, you're trying to promote you, but also you're rooting for all the other people doing it. So it just kind of becomes this, it's just really cool when you just start talking to people about it, and the things that can happen through that is really fun. So
yeah, no, it totally is. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. It's amazing if you just put yourself out there, what can happen.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, so where can we find you? Where can we get the books? Where can we connect with you? All that kind of stuff.
Yep. So I got a website, jonathanweiss.com.au. I didn't get the .com alone because someone had already taken that, which is really sad. I'm on Instagram as JONW_author. The books, if you want to start, you can check out my website. I got like a whole roadmap and series guide and reading order page in there, which is really fun, including a nice graphic to look at. But you can start, I reckon the best place to start is Molten Flux. That just got into self-published fantasy blog off. And if this is coming out on the 24th, if you're in the US or the UK, it's just gone on a Kindle countdown sale for 99 cents. So like $1, pick it up for $1. Just have it, it was great. So yeah, jump in there, or just give me a follow in Instagram and say g'day. I put some cool stuff up there sometimes. You might see me doing rock climbing videos as well, because I do that too. Got giant forearms from it and nothing else.
Nice. Nice. Well, awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link all that stuff up in the description so people can check all that out. It's been great to talk to you. And this has been Writing Quest, and we've been talking with Jonathan Weiss, and it's been great to have you, and we'll see you next time.
Absolute pleasure, yeah.